Welcome to another episode of the Up Close podcast. Today we have the pleasure of being joined by the former leader of the Democrats in the Florida House, former state rep, former vice mayor, former city councilman. What else did I leave out?
Ethan and Jacob Daddy.
Ethan and Jacob Daddy. Most importantly, Ethan and Jacob Daddy.
Hold on.
And Yvette's husband as well. I ain't gonna get in trouble either. But welcome to the show, man, Bobby.
Hey, thank you for having me.
Thank you, man. Mr. Bobby DuBose, man, the man, the myth, the legend himself in and around South Florida, man.
I don't know about all that, man. I don't know about all that.
You big bro to us, man. So,
yeah, man.
So let's talk about, obviously you've been in a bunch of different political positions before, starting from the city all the way up to a state rep in Tallahassee. And you served for about 16 years or so?
Yeah, closer to 15.
Okay.
It seemed like forever, though, man. Lifetime.
Now you're back home.
Yes, sir.
Right? How has life changed, man, since,
man. It's interesting you asked me that. And the best way I can explain it is literally I've got my life back. Because when you're a true public servant, you give your time, your energy, your treasure, your talents, to the community. It's you're sharing your time between the community, the people, your family, and the individual that usually gets left out if there's no more time to give is yourself. Mm-hmm. And so it's been different. It's been refreshing. Didn't realize it. There are times when I just wake up on a Saturday and decide to do nothing. I didn't even know that exists, because you're always on the go. But probably the most important thing is just the quality time I've got to spend with my family. I feel like I'm playing catch up and giving them all that time, and it's been really nice, man.
Yeah,
real nice.
I know how important family is to you. Obviously, you've got nephews, Ethan and Jacob, and also your wife, and also your close friends. So, tell me, what did you see that you maybe missed out on that you didn't know you were even missing out on when you were away in Tallahassee?
It's interesting that you asked me that because I have two sons, and they're at this point in time they're 10 years apart. They're probably like 9.5, but Ethan just turned 20, our Juneteenth baby. And so what I realized—
Happy birthday, Ethan.
Yeah. What I realized is that Ethan, both my kids had gotten used to me always going back and forth to Tallahassee, always being gone. And I always made a conscious effort to, whenever I'm home, try to make all the events and do the things. So what I realized with Ethan, his first reaction to things are to go to my wife because she was always the constant. I'm there, even when I'm in Tallahassee, I may be 3 days there, 4 days here or vice versa. And when I realized the difference was when I was home consistently, my youngest, Jacob, would start coming to me first and just being, and so he had gotten used to me being home. But prior to that, they're like, okay, we'll go to mom. Mom, I had this for school. Mom, I need this. Mom, I need that, because I wasn't there. Right. So that was the biggest thing that I realized. And so I just love it, man. I mean, who wouldn't want to be number one in their kids' mind when it comes to certain things? So that was probably the biggest difference, was my interaction with my kids.
Absolutely. Obviously, and what about with friends or colleagues and things? How has that kind of changed for you?
Well, I can tell you when I was going back and forth to Tallahassee, my friends, they call me like, man, you don't have time for me. So now I get the call and be like, hey, man, y'all don't have time for me. But and that's another thing too. When you're back and forth, everything's a sacrifice, and all relationships need some time or some maintenance. Some of my friend relationships are like a cactus, right? In the desert. I mean, it needs very little water, will still blossom, and when we hook up, it's like we haven't missed a beat.
Right.
And then you have some friendships, man, they're like perennials or what have you, and you gotta, maintain,
keep watering.
Hook up. Yeah, you gotta water them, man. You gotta hook up, and, you go grab a cigar, you're on the phone or something like that. And so I have more time to do that. And That's been real refreshing. You don't realize it when you're elected and you're in office. It's almost like you're on a hamster wheel. You're just going, you're just doing, you're going, you're doing the next move because these are the expectations of you, and you're just serving. And when you get off that hamster wheel, man, and you're like, wow, you know.
So it opens up a whole new kind of, this is how everybody else lives, right?
Yeah.
You know?
And that's true too, man. Just stuff that we do. We do more like short family trips and stuff like that because you want to plan something, but something's going on, or even, session's over. But, the governor calls for a special session, or, if you're in leadership, you might have to go to this conference, that conference. So you are constantly still on the go, even when you're not in session. And then when you're home, you're like, yeah, I'm home. But then you got to go to this club meeting. You got to go to this HOA meeting, or, when someone's calling you with an issue, or you need to go to.
They still call you with issues, though.
They still call me with issues, bro.
You're still a public servant.
I think, you know what? You got a point. Once you're a public servant, you're always a public servant. And part of it is just, second nature. People do call me, and the first thing I do is try and figure it out. Probably the thing that I'm getting most familiar with that I still haven't mastered is the art of saying no.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a skill. Like you really have to learn that, right?
You really have to learn that. And there were a couple of times someone called me a couple weeks ago. They're like, "Hey, I need you to do this," and they were saying something, and it was time sensitive. And I just happened to have a person on speaker, and my wife was there. I said, "You know what?" I said, "Congratulations to you." I said, "I'm gonna be really honest with you. My plate's full. I'm not gonna be able to help you with that, and I don't want to engage and be a disservice to you. You might want to find someone who can." And so my wife kind of looked at me like, wow, she was like, good for you.
Yeah, right.
I got a little
You're not used to that.
I'm not used to that. Usually when people call me, I just try and figure it out. And then what ends up happening, I'm up all night because I got to do my already committed stuff, and then the stuff that don't fit on the plate. And so
I hope when I call you, you'll still drive.
Come on, man. Yeah. But you family, so that's a difference
right,
too.
Yeah.
There are some people who you have these genuine relationships with, so they're always going to be in that posture.
Right.
I'm talking about the rest of the public that you've voluntarily gave your time to, and you had the commitment, and you had to live up to those expectations. So now you get to say, hey, you know what? Now I'm taking care of Bobby, and no one's saying to you, well, this is your job, you got to do, and so forth. You can really, invest in yourself.
Yeah. Have a healthy balance. Now, we spoke about friendships, right? And obviously you are born and raised here in Fort Lauderdale, and had friends before you entered politics, made friends during politics. And it seems like sometimes awesome friends,
politics,
great friends, and you actually ended up running against some people that you would consider, I guess, your friends, or at one point.
So there's a difference, right? You have political friends, or associates, or whatever the case may be, and then you have your friends, right? And so that was the one thing that. I would say I wanted to, I always said, I wanted to go in politics and come out with the friends that I went in with, and that wasn't the case. In fact, I think what that whole process did to me, it really revealed and defined, let me know who my friends are. And people come in your life for a reason, a season, and a lifetime. And I think it's very rare that you have those true friends that you have for a lifetime. And, so being elected has shown me, who, my friends are, and who were, political friends.
Right.
So I would say, to your question, every time I ran for office, it wasn't like I was running against a friend.
Okay.
Maybe because people group you together.
Yeah.
And these aren't people that, I spent Thanksgiving with or Christmas
Invite
or
to your house.
yeah, you know, they've been to my house. In fact, yeah, maybe, but yeah, some of them never been to my house. So it's just
So the media sometimes has their own
yeah,
narratives
yeah,
about how connected people are or how
right.
close people are. So and they use it for their own, whether it's clicks or
Well, I think
views and reads.
sometimes people will promote that because they want that to be the narrative. I remember when I first got elected for the city commission, and they were in his blogs, and they were saying, "Oh, you know, this person helped me get elected, and this person." And at the time, I barely even knew the person, so I kind of got used to that. So they'll set these narratives up, and they'll say this person with this person, that person, and that's I'm not going to say rarely, but that's not always the case.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people are politically situated together.
Mm-hmm.
Typically, at least for me, you know, there were people who I had as political friends, I like to call them, but I always kept my friends.
Right, okay.
And those are the people who, you know, I spent time with. I wouldn't necessarily talk about politics, or they were going to be there regardless of the situation. So you're right. I'm in a different space, and I'm really enjoying it. And a lot of those phone calls I don't get, and I just thank God these days.
I'm sure, right? So let's take it back to when you first entered politics. I guess you were in your mid-30s at that time.
When I first entered
Early
politics.
30s. What was your first run that you ran for office? Because if I'm not mistaken, you actually won.
Yeah.
The first
you mean
time
like when I got home? I mean,
yeah, we got home, not college politics,
okay,
because I know you were
okay.
involved in
That's-
college politics
I mean,
as well.
That's where I kind of.
That's where you cut your teeth, right?
That's what. That was the real politics.
That's UF, right?
Yeah, man.
You know,
Blue Key and all of
all
the
of
good
that,
stuff.
all
man.
of that.
Yeah.
So you were in student government up there. And
Yeah. But when I came home, I moved back to like where I grew up, man. I started out in those green apartments, 2nd Street, and I still live over there, a couple of blocks from the first place I call home. And I ran for city commission, and that was in 2009.
Okay.
And
take us back.
Oh man, that seems way back. Put it this way, when I got elected in 2009, Ethan was 4 years old.
Wow. And now he's
20.
Training to be a pilot, 20 years old.
Training to be a pilot, yes sir. And the first time I ran, the city of Fort Lauderdale had primaries. So a primary in February and then general in March. So in February, you had to get like 50 plus one. And it was me and 3 other individuals. So there was 4 of us. And I had missed that mark by, I think it was like maybe 12 votes.
Wow, so I had to go to
so
a runoff.
I had to go on a runoff. And that was a very interesting time too. Because just that whole campaigning was pretty exciting, because in November of 2008, the previous year, a couple of months before, Obama had got elected. And so because the city of Fort Lauderdale was different, so there are a lot of folks who were running for local office who were actually on the ballot, you know, the same time as Obama. So not me. So they were done, and everyone was headed up to the inauguration. They're like, you're going. And I had an election, you know, a couple of weeks after that. And I was like, nah, unless Obama going to come down here and knock on some doors for me, I'm going to have to go ahead and sit this one out. But I did make it, you know, the second time around. But, you know, it was an exciting time. You know, I was back in my community where I grew up at, and being able to plug in, and life was full circle, right? I mean, here I am, you know, living in these green apartments. My parents were teenage parents, and I was the first person to go out to college. And I got the opportunity to come back and plug in and be a resource and be a part of things that were bigger than self. That was, I mean, now the whole 6 Trunk corridor is on steroids, but that was back when, you know, it was the big fight to do the infrastructure, and it's 2 lanes, 3 lanes. So got in the office, there was some big issues that were dividing the community, and I remember I was able to get some money, federal dollars. Congressman Hastings had came in, and we were really able to just kind of do the infrastructure, which was really important. Back in the day, in that Northwest corridor, a lot of folks' homes, that's where the gas stations were. So there was a lot of cleanup that needed to be done before we got to what we see today. So,
okay, and it's changing quite a bit.
man, I feel like every day there's something new.
It's exciting to see what it'll be like in 10 years from today.
It's a mixed bag for me, man,
Yeah.
because I feel like history is really important, and I see it not reflective of what I grew up. It's looking less and less like, my grandparents, great grandparents, folks, and it's looking more like somewhere else for
So
other people.
you kind of maybe interpret the change that you're seeing to lean more on the not so beneficial or good side for the community.
I think, growth is good, and, that area, that CRA was created so that individuals that live there could really prosper, and there were great opportunities for, in my opinion, a lot of folks. I mean, a few people here and there, but, an area that no one wanted to live in, and we lived there, and then now everyone's moving in, and the folks that have stayed there are finding it unaffordable, right? So that in itself is a little troubling. I love the growth. I love the development. Don't get me wrong. I just wish that the two could marry better and it could be beneficial. I see a lot of people who are struggling because of the development, the increase in value. And there are people who've been there for generations, and there's just a lot of history. I just, want to maintain our history there. And, a lot of buildings are being knocked down. And to me, that's the unfortunate part of it.
That's like a byproduct, unfortunate byproduct of development or growth. Probably, we've seen it all over.
Yeah, it's nationally. I remember I was a local elected official, and I used to talk to, a lot of black elected officials, and our biggest thing that we would come together on is the gentrification of our neighborhoods and a lot of our history being bulldozed down. And so it's a mixed bag. You want development, you want growth, but when it becomes something that the folks who live there can't afford.
Right. So how do you save the neighborhood then in that situation? How do you preserve the community aspect of it and maintain that community, but also develop the community and to raise it? Because it seems like you can't have one and have the other at the same time. So it's got to be some give and take. If you had a magic wand, how could it be done where it maintains the essence of what the neighborhood is?
I think if I had a magic wand, and some of the things that I did fight for on the commission was to bring in more economic empowerment for the people who live there, opportunities for folks to, retrain, resources for small businesses, the things that you're seeing other people outside of coming to do. That was more of the intent and the drive to have that, to create those opportunities so that you could have, a reflection of the old and the new. Of course, with development, you're going to bring in new people, but you should have vehicles to maintain things. So, more of, and we did some of that, but, I wanted more, where there were more opportunities for people who lived in the community to access funds, to access training, to make opportunities more available, to maintain more of the history there. We do it in other parts of the city where there's a lot of, and I think there's something to be said when you can go to a place, and we do it all the time, we travel, right? We go visit these historic places, and they really mean something. You go step in a place. I remember going to Canada and being in, the Underground Railroad. It spoke to me when I take my kids to places. We're in Memphis. We went to
Lorraine Hotel.
Yeah, and my 10-year-old and my 20-year-old, and they're looking at, then to have the conversations and what it meant and what it did to them. And so I wish we would have been able to, or the city would have been able to maintain more of that. I think would have been important. And also, again, more the way it was structured, at the end of the day, there should have been a lot more folks who had a lot more opportunities for economic empowerment.
And I totally agree. I sat on a couple of boards and worked in a couple of neighborhoods and areas. One that comes to mind is Overtown.
Yeah.
And it seemed like, the people that live there, they don't see the changes, and it all of a sudden just is like a snowstorm.
Yeah.
And they can't do anything about it at a certain point, and it's just gone. It's too late, and I feel like that's kind of what I'm seeing in that Sistrunk corridor. Now, I mean, I've only been back down here for 10 years now, so.
But it's the crazy thing is, again, I would go to national conferences and we would have, different
same things happen
and stuff, and we start having these conversations, and I could talk to colleagues in Texas, Oklahoma,
Jersey, Maryland.
Georgia, and we're all saying the same thing. A lot of times, things are institutional. Here's the thing. You starve an area by not giving it the resources, and then it meets the definition of quote, unquote, slum and blight, and then you create a CRA or opportunity zones, all these different things, and you create these opportunities, vehicles that they are painted as they're for folks in the community, but the people who end up accessing them and benefiting from them aren't from there. So those are the types of things that, when I see it, it's not as glamorous because there's so much rich history in the northwest section of Fort Lauderdale, but I just feel like 15 years from now, you might not even know it exists.
And there's so many brilliant, smart, knowledgeable people that have a tie to that area that I think they would come together and say, okay, we know that development is happening, but how do we preserve a piece of this? Like you said, our institution of whatever the Lorraine Motel is in that area, or whatever it was, institutions that you can preserve so that the neighborhood still maintains that character.
I'll just keep it 100 with you. Politics, man.
You're the politician.
Yeah. I mean, even when I served on the commission, I was the only person who looked like me. So, everyone brings their own life's experience to the table. So when you're one person, and you got to get two other people to go along with your vision or what you want to do, and everyone's fighting because the resources are finite. So you have some wins and you have some losses. That's why you said magical one. I would have just did it all in that area, but unfortunately it's not like that. And so the politics still kick in, and that's the reality of it.
Right.
And I think that's what you see when you see similar things, how, like you said, Overtown and out here, and we could just go down the list. It's the politics that kind of drive it.
Right. So what would you say then? I mean, because you spent your time at Fort Lauderdale City Commission and became vice mayor and then went to Tallahassee. What would you say maybe is your signature win that you are most proud of that you accomplished in your time in politics? And I have one in mind, but I'm going to own it.
I have a couple. I'm going to say the one that always jumps out at me first is Groveland 4, because that was a great miscarriage of justice there.
For those that don't know about the Groveland 4 can you just...
So 4 young black men lost their lives in Groveland, Florida, because, just plain and simple, a white woman lied. And so not only did they lose their lives, some of them were prominent black folks. They went in, they ran them out of town, they took the land, they burnt that whole deal. So had a generational effect. And the reason why it was one of my proudest moments was because stuff like this happens all the time. It has happened. It didn't just happen in Groveland. And those of you know, I have two sons, but I raised my nephews, so 4 young black men in America. And to have to be able to sponsor the bill and to have the entire Florida chamber vote unanimously for it and issue an apology to the descendants, it was just a feeling that it's just kind of hard to describe. And to see, the descendants there, and so that was just a feeling that that I just felt really good about. And then I passed a piece of legislation kind of around education, and it was basically restraint seclusion. And so 2 parts of that. Basically, there was nothing on the books. Some of our most vulnerable kids that went to school, didn't communicate well. Some were coming home, bruises, broken arms, and, I think maybe had 1 or 2 fatalities. And so it's a hard piece of legislation. It's kind of one of those legacy pieces. I mean, people have tried it years and years. Mm-hmm. They've tried to pass it in D.C., but the politics played a big role. And also, too, disproportionately look at those numbers who fall in that category.
Right.
People look like little boys. Yeah, boys look like us. And to be able to pass that piece of legislation, to get something on the books that laid out how we handled our restraint seclusion, that's something that I felt really good at. It took me about 3-4 years. And it was one of those bills that made all the sense in the world, but it was the hardest piece of legislation
to pass. Why?
Yeah. The politics, unions, it changed. We're saying, typically people want to do things their way. And so I think when we passed it, I don't even think half of the states had passed it. We were probably 20, 21 or something. Another piece of legislation that I felt really good about, and it was when I was a freshman, I got this piece of legislation, wrongful incarceration. And so I learned about that bill. In fact, it's someone that I looked up to, and she was a big mentor of mine, Senator Joyner.
Okay, I think you Joyner.
It was a legislation that she passed, and Florida had a clean hands provision in that piece of legislation. So basically, if you were wrongfully incarcerated and you had done something before, then the state was like, yeah, we don't owe you nothing. Because the statute lays out, and I'm like, what kind of business is this? If my kid does something wrong, don't come tell me what your brother did.
Yeah, that's crazy.
You're wrong for what you did. So that took a lot. In fact, I would just say I was only able to remove a couple of fingers, because all I was able to remove was if someone was wrongfully incarcerated, and as long as it wasn't like a major felony, murder or something, because misdemeanors were kicking you out of that. Wow. And so I felt good about that. And I'll just say one more. The last one that I passed was we created a rare disease advisory council.
That's the one I was thinking of.
Yeah.
That's the one that was on top of my head.
Yeah. You're going to give me all.
And I know why.
Something in there. But, I lost my mom to a rare disease, scleroderma. And, if it's not something that's big and popular, it doesn't get the attention. And so this platform brings, a place for folks with rare diseases, doctors and our universities, a platform to address those. So that one was really personal to me. And so I felt really, really good about that, because I know what it's like to watch someone that is suffering and dealing with something that no one really has an idea about, but no one's really putting a lot of attention on it, right? And so that was another thing. I think Florida was kind of young in doing that, which was great. I think we were probably 11th, 12th state to do it. But it's amazing to me, things like that make all the sense, get caught up in the political cycle. So felt good about that. So, was able to do something, criminal justice, education, healthcare, and so I feel pretty good about my time in Tallahassee.
That's a nice accomplishment right there. Most people don't even get one.
Oh man, who you telling? Who you telling? Right? There are people who will be there 8 years and they won't have a bill.
Which is, and they still get reelected.
Yeah, it's when you're. Let me put it this way: when I was leaving to go to Tallahassee, and people asked me, they said, "Bobby, why would you want to go to Tallahassee and be in a minority?" I think when I got out there, we were in a super minority, and coming from blue Broward.
Yeah.
And I was like, nah, I'll be able to do it. And I was able to do it, but it's a lot of work, man. You really have to work. You got to work with your colleagues across the aisle. Sometimes you got to work.
And what goes into that? Because, we all watch TV and, we see like they sit in a room here and say, if you do this one, when I come to vote on this one, I'll do this. And then, they bring different bills. So, how do you convince people that something even though it obviously makes sense, right? And it's obviously the right thing to do, but because of politics, they've taken a position on opposite. How do you convince them that, hey, this is the right thing to do and you should vote like this?
So, I think twofold. So a big part of it, and people will say this, but it is really true, it's relationships. If you can build relationship with folks, even though you may disagree, they will give you an opportunity to sit down and present, because they're going to come to you with their ideas as well. And so if you have a relationship level of respect, you'll hear someone out. That's part of it. The other part, too, is a lot of times bringing in the different stakeholders, because at the end of the day, we're all elected, and we all have our constituents and folks we have to answer to. So sometimes within that coalition, maybe a group of folks that the other person may be willing to listen to, and then they can advocate your position.
Leverage.
Yeah. And, it takes a certain temperament. Now, I will say this. When I got to Tallahassee, we were able to, work across the aisle. We were able to have, robust debates and then go out to dinner or something like that. And, so we build relationships. As I was leaving, a lot of that had deteriorated, and it was more like party lines, and people were nasty, and there was less interaction. And so from, what I've gathered, so I've been gone, 2 years, that it's gotten worse. So, when I got there, our big thing was we don't want to be like D.C. But when I was leaving, I was like, yeah, we just like D.C.
And one thing I guess we're not like D.C. is that we have term limits.
We do have term limits.
Do you agree with that? For here, for Florida, does it work?
I agree, yes and no.
Tell us.
So I say I agree with term limits because honestly, but for term limits, I'm not sure I would have made it to the place that I'm at. I ran locally because the prior commissioner had termed out. So it created an opportunity for me to run.
Okay, so it allows other people a chance.
I'll be a hypocrite if I said.
But you may have won anyway, right?
Well, I wasn't going to run against him.
Okay.
And then I think, so that's the yes. The no is, well, let me say yes with modification. I definitely don't think 8 years is enough in Tallahassee. I think you need um, maybe 12. I'm not sure what the magical number is, and here's why. The biggest thing, I think, to be effective, yes, policy, but it's the budget and knowing the budget, because you want to bring resources home. You want to help your community in that way as well. I mean, when you pass policy, it's for the whole state. So you may be a state rep from your area, but when you're shaping policy, it's going to impact the entire state.
Right.
I'll just carve out and I'll say, unless you put in policy or a statute like a pilot program or something, but eventually that spans out. When you're doing appropriations and different projects and stuff, that is money that you're trying to draw down from a pot to benefit your community, your area. And so it's massive, it's fast moving, and honestly, it's not something you learn overnight. I feel, by the time I felt good about it, it was time to leave. And so I think given more time, folks who are there longer can really start to draw down more resources for their community. So, yes, term limits, no to how they're currently set up.
Okay. So let's talk about the current state of politics. Now that you are a little bit removed, what's going on in Florida? I feel like Democrats are in the super minority.
Democrats are in the super minority. It's
again.
Like the first time, so we're in the super minority in the House and the Senate. Like when I went up, we were just in the super minority in the House. So now it's both chambers. So the good thing was, in the House, we got there. They told us, we can shake it up. We can raise hell over there, which we did. Mm-hmm. And then we just went over to the Senate and talked to our senators to say, hey, help with this and so forth, because they're a smaller body and that's how things. But now both are in the super minority, so it's very challenging.
What does that really do? What does that mean for the folks that don't know? How hard is it to move stuff through policy, get laws passed, make change, get stuff to the governor's desk? How difficult is it become?
Again, a lot of it's going to depend on you. You're going to have to really put in a lot of work. I think you build relationships. Again, there are people who will go up and they'll get very little done. Or when I say where you can say they passed these bills and that bills, a lot of people do work. People have a different temperament when they go out there. So from what I gather, and I talk to my colleagues, they complain on the other side because now they're saying there's too many people over there. It's almost like they got too many mouths to feed. So, I remember I was there when I first got as a freshman, and we're hanging out with some of our Republican colleagues, and we're just talking, and one of them was like, man, y'all got it so good over there. And I was like, you being funny, right? You got jokes right now. He was like, nah. And I was like, why would you say that? He was like, y'all get to say what y'all want to say, vote how y'all want to vote, do what you want to do. And that's when I started learning that they gave them their bills. And so there is, a difference there. I could file whatever I want to file. Sometimes people file a bill to make a statement. So I think ideally, if the chamber was like 60-60, 20-20, it would probably be ideal, because now everyone has to work with each other to make sure they get their bills done. Yeah. But when you have, for us on our side, being the minority party, it was extremely difficult. I mean, when we're in the minority, there were times procedurally we could stop things, and we did. I remember one night we held them up when they were working on the teacher's bill, and there were parts of it they needed us procedurally, and we weren't given, so they gave us what we wanted.
Right.
So we were
So
up
use
all
that
night.
right, to leverage to get something in return for.
When you're and sometimes procedurally it happens, you may need more than a simple majority, but when you're in a super minority, when they gonna need you?
Yeah, doesn't matter.
I mean, they literally. I remember when I was there, one rep was basically said, "We don't need y'all." On the other side,
just like that.
Yeah, man.
We're not sugarcoating, hiding nothing. It is what it is.
Yeah, but there are people who will still get things done. There are people who will work, and the best thing too is when you can, find someone across the aisle who may believe in what you believe in. When I passed wrongful incarceration compensation, my Senate partner was a Republican, Senator Bradley. In fact, when Senator Joyner was there before she termed out and she asked me to carry the bill in the House, it was me, her, and Senator Bradley. And when she turned out, he's like, Senator, we're going to get this through. And when we passed it, she was there. And
awesome.
So there are opportunities for that, but you got to work.
Yeah.
You got to work.
Now, right now we look at the bench, as we call it in Florida, right, of the upcoming leaders. And I don't know if it's clear or not, if the bench is very shallow, not deep. So, like, in your estimation, just on the outside looking in now, looking at the Democratic bench, who are some people that stick out that may be able to rise and actually, win a statewide election?
So I'll say we do have a bench. I mean, people use that terminology, but, when you're looking at the future leaders who are going to run for higher office, all you got to look at is who's in office now. The House members, the Senate members, people will run for other offices and stuff like that. The first person that comes to mind for me is Leader Driscoll, Fentress Driscoll. She served on my leadership team. She's going to be a leader for 2 terms, something that we haven't had in forever. And she's doing a great job building infrastructure. We're just going to have to take it one step at a time. So right now, this cycle, they got to make sure that they get out of the super minority and just go back to the old minority. And I think that she has a good, plan in place in that regards.
It's been rumored that she's maybe thinking about running for governor.
That ain't for me to speak on, man. I'll let Leader Driscoll speak on that. But she's, if you would say, an up-and-coming rising star. But again, over in the Senate, you have Senator Davis, Tracy Davis. She was in the House. Now she's in the Senate. We have, our Senator Osgood. She's done yeoman's, like, she worked on the school board. She's there. I think we do have I think people use that term loosely because they're thinking about, like, locally. But when you do look locally, we do have a lot of folks who have stepped up and run and have so much potential. Heck, our boy HP.
Yeah.
He's
definitely a rising star.
Yeah, absolutely. So I see maybe I see what folks don't see when they say we don't have a bench. I feel like we got a lot of folks up and down the state. So I gave you a couple of people here, gave you somebody in Tampa, gave you somebody in Duval. We got some folks out there. We got Senator Jones.
Yeah, Shevin Jones.
I could keep running it down.
So there's we have people out there that definitely can make an impact in the future, and I hope they rise up and do, and I hope that the party itself figures out, well, how do we get people energized, motivated to get out there and vote and get registered, because Republicans have massively registered more people, new people than Democrats, and they go out and vote for whatever it is.
I mean, that's true, but let's if we're, we just had a special election, House District 35, and Democrats won that one. And so I think we are figuring it out. And, once upon a time, this thing was reversed. The Republicans sat where we sat. So, politics is, I say, it can be like the stock market. It's cyclical, right? So yeah. I think we're definitely on the climb.
Right. Hopefully so. Hopefully so. Well, I thank you for joining me on my podcast today. It's been a great conversation. I could sit here and talk to you, for hours. Yeah. All we need is a cigar, and we're good to go, right?
We could do that.
But I do want to leave you with this, though, because if there is one question that you would want to ask of whoever the next guest is, what would that question be?
In which
is
it politics?
Let's keep it within politics.
So if someone were, whoever your next political guest, and I could ask them a question, I'm gonna make it personal. And is this person elected or not?
This is an elected person, yes.
I think I would ask them, what's their position, and what are they doing as it relates to mental health, specifically with Black males?
Well, that's a powerful point to leave on, man, because that impacts a lot of us, and it goes unnoticed or unspoken a lot of times, and we both have personal, connection and history with that. So, on that note, thank you, leader. I still call you Leader DuBose, former rep, my big bro. I thank you for coming and joining us today.
Hey, anytime, man. Right. Anytime, man. I love what you're doing. You're doing a phenomenal job, and you call me big bro. I call you little bro. So we brothers forever.
Appreciate it, man.
Sir.
Thank you for joining us on another episode of Up Close Podcast. Today we've been lucky enough to be joined by Bobby DuBose. If you like what you heard, go ahead and hit the subscribe button down below so you can be alerted on our next and upcoming episodes.